Bonjour et bienvenue. Thank you for attending our virtual meeting of the CPATA Board of Directors. I now call the meeting to order. If you'd like to listen to the meeting in French, you can access the simultaneous interpretation by clicking the globe icon in the bottom of your window and selecting your language. CPATA is the Canadian federal regulator of patent agents and trademark agents, with staff and licensees living and working throughout our nation. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land we call Canada as the traditional and ancestral territory of many Indigenous peoples, people who have lived on and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us, and for those who have gone before us. We respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Peoples of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our communities. Today and every day, we acknowledge this and offer our appreciation for living and working on this beautiful land. By offering this land acknowledgement, we remind ourselves that we live in a land of great diversity and that we are accountable for our relationships with all who live here. The CPATA Board and Management, along with our Audit and Risk Committee Chair, Bob Plamondon, met in Ottawa in November for an engaging strategic planning session. We worked through our upcoming strategic framework, our budget, and the reserves policy, all of which are included in today's meeting package. I think Bob will be joining us for the financial portion of our agenda today if he isn't in a Senate meeting, so we'll play that by ear. We also discussed the upcoming fee-setting call for comments, and more information will be provided on that in due course. I'm grateful for the board and the team's due diligence and dedication to excellence in professional regulation and the financial sustainability of the organization. CPATA has been very involved in the IP ecosystem this fall, with board and staff attending and speaking at a number of conferences. I attended the Innovation Asset Collective's National IP Summit in Ottawa with CEO Judah Straczynski, fellow director Karima Bawa, and our communications director, Dana Dragomir. It was a great opportunity to connect with Canada's IP leaders and learn about innovations in AI, national defense, and natural resources, among others. I also attended IPIC's annual conference in Saskatoon with Judah and Deputy Registrar Jen Slobodkin, where we spoke with licensees and IPIC leadership about important issues and projects in the IP ecosystem. Judah presented at APRAM, the Canadian contingency of the International Francophone Association for Intellectual Property Experts. It was a great opportunity to connect with IP practitioners within our Francophone community. CPATA staff presented at CNAR's annual conference in Calgary. CNAR is the Canadian Network of Agencies for Regulation. Connecting with other regulation experts and sharing industry best practices is one of the ways CPATA pursues operating excellence in professional regulation. CPATA is undertaking an important survey for trainees and supervisors. We hope you'll take the time to complete the 15-minute survey before January 14th to help us understand how agents in training are exposed to competencies as well as supervision and workplace strengths. The survey is voluntary and anonymous, and data collected will be used to inform the development of supervised practice training resources, such as a template training plan or template assessment resources. It follows last year's consultation on the supervised practice training model. That concludes my report. I want to wish our licensees, partners, and friends a wonderful upcoming holiday season and all the very best in the new year. And now let's turn to today's meeting. Board meeting materials are published on the website in both English and French, where they are accessible to the public prior to the meeting. Recordings of each meeting are also available on the website. I'll begin by asking directors to declare if they have any conflicts regarding matters on the agenda. I know that at agenda item 3.2 on committee appointments, the directors involved will recuse themselves. I'm wondering though, are there any other conflicts to declare? Looking around the table across my Hollywood Squares screen here. And okay, seeing none, would someone please move to adopt the agenda? The motion is, be it resolved that the agenda for the December 10, 2025 meeting of CPATA's Board of Directors is approved as circulated. Could someone make that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. And Scott seconded. Do I have any objections? No, that means all are in favor and that motion is carried. Thank you. All right, so now we will go into the rest of our agenda. The first item is the consent agenda. So before we make a motion on the consent agenda, I'd like to invite directors to indicate if there are any items that are included in the consent agenda that should be removed and added to the regular agenda for further discussion. So looking to directors. All right, it looks like there aren't any items to be moved. So there are two motions within this section. The first, that the board members adopt the consent agenda as circulated. So could I have someone make that motion, please? Steve, thank you. Seconded by Tom. Perfect. Any objections?
None.
Perfect. Then that motion has been carried. The next motion, I'm going to put it on the table. We'll have it moved and seconded, and then we'll open it for any discussion. So it's around the minutes, approving the minutes and the recommended changes to the committee skills matrices, which are in the consent agenda, but we do need a motion on both of those items. Judah, after the items were circulated to the board, we realized that there were a couple of small housekeeping items within the board skills matrices that we want to adjust. And directors, those are around how we articulate the technical skills that are required. The wording that we used around technical skills is slightly different across the different skills matrices, and we want them to be consistent. So in some areas they're in like the knowledge section, and in some areas they're in the skills section. So we just want to put them in the same section of every matrix, and we also want to just use the same wording. So Judah, if you could maybe just shed any more light that you think is required on that, and then could you read into the record the amended motion?
Yeah, this was just a drafting omission as we were cleaning up some of the attribute skills knowledge that are found in the committee skills matrices. There were a couple of different spaces where we had different language that was inadvertent, and where in using the charts, there were some terms that were in the wrong spots. Ultimately, for each committee, there's a technological skills requirement that is intended to be there, and so we have some minor housekeeping, and I'll walk through each of them. But first, in general, just wanted to lay that foundation.
Okay, so if you could read the motion into the record, please, Judah.
Okay, so first, just so everyone understands the changes on them, the recommended changes from what is in the materials is that in the skills matrix for the audit and risk committee, there's currently a reference to technology in the skills section that will be changed from the phrase "to use the technology facilitating the committee's work" to the phrase "competent to use the technology facilitating the committee's work" at page 36 of the materials. So you can see this is not earth-shattering, but housekeeping for consistency. For the governance committee and registration committee skills matrices, we're removing the phrase "technology used to support CPATA's committees" from the knowledge section of each, and adding the phrase "competent to use the technology facilitating the committee's work" in the skills section of each. In the investigations committee skills matrix, we're moving the previous language "competent to use the technology facilitating the committee's work" from the attributes section to the skills section, And in the discipline committee skills matrix, we're removing the current reference to technology under knowledge to replace it with new wording under skills, including competent to use the technology facilitating the committee's work and the hearing process. So slight change from the standard language found elsewhere, given the online hearings technology as well. And so there's also a minor change to the minutes. We had inadvertently missed the report by the discipline committee in describing the reports that this group heard from in June. And so in the committee reports section of the minutes that are at page 7 of the materials in English, we should add that Marcel Mangeon gave an oral report of the discipline committee. That was an inadvertent omission on the draft. So there is a draft revised motion, which is that it be resolved that the minutes and the consent agenda are approved, subject to the additional note under the committee reports section that Marcel Mangeon gave an oral report of the discipline committee, and that the skills matrices and the consent agenda are approved, subject to further housekeeping amendments regarding committee technology skills as presented.
Okay, so with all of that, could I have someone make that motion, please? It is. Thank you. Scott, you've seconded it. Thank you so much. So before I ask for a vote on the motion, any questions? Anything anyone wants to chat about there? No, we're all good. Okay, and within the consent agenda, there are a number of committee reports. They are excellent reports, and directors are expected to have read all of those reports, and they've been made public. So just want to really acknowledge that these were excellent reports. And we do have members of some of the committees here with us in our meeting. So if anybody's got any questions or comments or anything, sure, happy to take them. Okay, all right. Seeing none, I will now call for a vote on the motion to accept the consent agenda. All right, are there any objections? Seeing none, that motion is carried. Thanks so much. All right, the next item on our agenda is the governance updates section. So it's containing governance committee terms of reference, and there will be a motion there. So Tom, would you like to take that on and read in that motion, and then we'll move and second it and then have any discussion? Does that work for you? You're on mute, I think, Tom. Or I can read the motion if you like.
Is that better?
Much better.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, the motion that's before the board is can be found at page 2 of the agenda or page 2 of the materials. Be it resolved that the board approve the revised governance committee terms of reference as presented. Members of the board will recall that we have the governance committee has been reviewing and revising terms of reference for all of the committees, and this is really the last one that we are bringing to the board for consideration and approval. The board will have seen previous versions of these terms of reference. Essentially, what we're doing, and I don't intend to, Madam Chair, to take us through the terms of reference. As you mentioned earlier, board members are assumed to have read all the materials. But really, what we're doing is cleaning up the language, taking out, some responsibilities that the governance committee previously had, but which is no longer are no longer really relevant in the way we are governing the work of the board. So I think probably the best way of proceeding, with your permission, Madam Chair, is simply to open the discussion if any of the board members have any questions. If you feel that that's the way to move, that's what I would propose to do.
That makes perfect sense, Tom. Thank you. So Tom has made the motion. Just before I open for discussion, can I have someone second that motion, please?
I will second. It's Karima.
Thanks very much, Karima. Okay, so the motion is now on the table and this item is open for discussion. Any questions or thoughts to share with the governance committee on their terms of reference? Tom, it looks like everything that was provided in the package was sufficient.
I know how hard this crowd can be sometimes.
You know, this is a good point. It's a good point. So clearly people have what they need to be able to vote. So I'm going to open that vote now. Are there any objections to this motion? All right, seeing none, that means everyone is in favor and that motion has passed. So thanks very much, Tom.
Thank
I
you.
think you're up for the next one too, I believe, which is the CEO and Registrar's Annual
Yeah.
Performance and Compensation Review Working Group Terms of Reference. And within that, you will have a motion to create the committee, and then there will be a motion regarding appointments to the working group. So what I'm going to suggest, Tom, is that let's make the motion to create the committee and have whatever discussion and vote on that. Then when it comes to appointments to the committee, which some of those appointments are sort of ex officio, but by that I mean simply that the people appointed to them are appointed based on the positions that they hold on the board, and then there's another sort of director at large appointment that's going to be made. When that happens, the directors involved will recuse themselves from the meeting. And we chatted about the logistics of how best to recuse ourselves, given that we're virtual. And we've determined that if we like just press or like go on mute and stop our video, that's good enough. And somebody will text us when it's time to come back in, and we'll come on back in that way. So, and Tom, sorry for you too. So let's start then, Tom, with the making the motion to create the committee. We'll have it seconded and then open that up for discussion.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So really what we're doing here is so the purpose of this working group is to facilitate the annual review of the performance of the CEO and registrar. So it's not just it's also involved in the performance review is also a compensation review. And so this is really, as I said, and I think this is key, is to facilitate the work of the board. Obviously, ultimately, the board is responsible for the annual performance and compensation review. And this is a means through which the board will be able to do that work on a facilitated basis. So that's the first point. The second point is what we are doing is really formalizing what has been our practice in the last couple of years anyway, since the recall that initially we were getting up and running. So we had basically a contract interim CEO. Then there was a transition both at the board level for a new chair and a new CEO. And the college is really up and running, and we're building out our policies, procedures, etc. And so now we're at that stage in maturity as a professional regulator where we need to start formalizing some of our processes in terms of the board's oversight of the CEO's performance and compensation. So we're really just formalizing what has been the practice in the last couple of years, and which I think we've all agreed is quite effective actually for a board of our size and a regulator of our size. So it's not overly complicated, and it goes like this. The chairs of the appointed chairs of the various committees of the board will under this proposal, as we have done in the past, form a group that will because by virtue of their roles as chairs, they have they interact more with the CEO than perhaps a board member who is not directly involved in running a committee. So it was felt. So I think the board has felt that this is appropriate. That said, after discussions with the board, it was also considered to be prudent and appropriate to have an additional board member added to the working group, particularly a board member, who has had some responsibility by virtue of experience and/or education background to also facilitate this review. And so what we're really doing is just formalizing and being transparent about how we're going to go about doing this. It's fair to the CEO and registrar. It's also fair to to the board because they will continue to have ultimate authority and input into the process. And it is also transparent to the public and to the licensees. So that is what we're planning. That is what we're asking the board to approve is the establishment of this working group. And as you've mentioned, Ruth, the committee chairs will be the persons who are being proposed for this working group is yourself as the chair, myself as the chair of the governance committee, the chair of the is it audit and finance or finance and audit? I can't remember.
Audit and risk. Audit and risk.
Audit and risk. So A before R. Audit and risk committee. And who am I missing?
Our director at large.
And yeah, well, but I think I've got all the
Oh
three
yes, you've
chairs.
got all the chairs. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and then the member at large, and that I think we've the board has discussed, and we'd like to propose Scott Jolliffe as that additional person. Scott obviously has many years of experience running one of the largest and most prestigious law firms in the country. And if there's anybody on our board that knows something about how to evaluate the performance of the CEO, it would be Scott. So that's who we're proposing as the added member. Those are my remarks. Thanks, Ruth.
That's fantastic. So have we already put the motion on the table? No, we haven't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the motion be it resolved that the board approve the creation of a CEO and registrar's working group. Annual performance and compensation review working group and approve its attached terms of reference. Motion
Perfect.
Regarding the appointments to the working group will be brought forward at the meeting. So that's basically
that's next. Right. So the first motion is to create the working group and approve the terms of reference. So that Tom has now made that motion. Actually, you know what, Tom? Since you're going to be on the committee, I'm going to have someone else make that motion. So
perfectly good. I hope we'll be able to find somebody that's prepared to get behind this.
That's perfect. Steve has made the motion. Idis has seconded the motion. Are there any objections?
None.
Okay, perfect. That motion has now carried. The next motion is regarding appointment to the working group, and Tom and I will recuse ourselves, and Scott will recuse himself as well. So we'll come on back once you've finished any discussion. And Judah, if you could just sort of organize the vote on that too, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. So we're just going to give a second here as certain people go offline for this part of the meeting. The motion, which Tom has already foreshadowed, is with respect to the appointments. And it's very simple. It's be it resolved that Ruth McHugh, Bob Plamondon, Tom Conway, and Scott Jolliffe be appointed to the working group. Perhaps I can ask for a mover.
I'll move. Karima.
Karima, thank you. And a seconder? I see Iris, no offense to anyone else who had hands up. Why don't we open? Are there any comments or questions, concerns, criticisms before we go to vote? Okay, seeing nothing. All in favor? Okay, and I don't see any opposed. I believe the motion is carried then. So perhaps I can ask someone from my team to just ping those who left and welcome them back to the meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks, Judah. So
So I can confirm that on a vote that was just passed, you, Tom Conway, Bob Plamondon, and Scott Jolliffe have all been appointed to this working group.
that's great. Thank you. Scott, are you back with us now? Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that.
Are your ears burning, Scott?
Yeah, what happened?
I hear it went quite badly off when we were
Okay. Oh,
offline.
well, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. The committee will look forward to getting started on its work now that we have been officially established. So more to follow on that. Okay, now next on our agenda is the 2023 to 2025 Strategic Framework in Review. It's the one that we're in. Judah, you had a
Yes, actually, Madam Chair, just before we go there, we have a quick motion to appoint
right.
a
Sorry.
new member to
Registration.
the
Yes.
registration committee. And Jen had initially been slotted in to present this, but I will today, if that's all right.
Of course, yes. And thanks so much, Judah. I'd forgotten that. Go ahead.
Okay, so the registration committee is one of our core regulatory committees that helps with all matters related to entry into the professions. And we have terms of reference and skills matrices that you've heard about to facilitate this work. And of course, incredible individuals who participate in the committee's work, including a patent agent or a patent side and trademark side appointee, one from each from the Canadian Intellectual Property Office. We have received a letter from our current appointee from CPO, Jeff Orser, who has served and done wonderful work as the Patent Office's representative. He will be stepping off the committee later this month, and CPO, to enable our continuity on that committee, has put forward a new candidate, and we're pleased that they have put forward Craig McMillan. Mr. McMillan is an accomplished staff member at CPO. He is an engineer by training and has served first as a patent examiner for over a decade before moving in to more program management areas of responsibility on behalf of CPO. His distinguished career to date has led him to currently serving as a program manager, patent policy and international affairs. And in that area, he's been involved in representing Canadian interests at international meetings of the World Intellectual Property Organization and representing Canadian interests in international efforts around patent law and patent policy. So we would be we're honored to have him to serve on this committee to help us have the perspectives of CPO with respect to patent areas for our registration committee. And the motion is be it resolved that Craig McMillan be appointed to the registration committee.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for the intro, Judah. Could I have someone make the motion and a seconder, and then we'll have discussion on it? Scott, you're making the motion, and Tom, you're seconding. That's great. Thanks so much. That motion is now on the table, and we have the item open for discussion. Any questions, comments? Again, all of the background material was provided in advance on this, so I think directors are sufficiently informed to make a decision on this. Looking around the table, and all right, seeing that there doesn't appear to be any discussion or questions on it, I'll go ahead then and call for a vote. Are there any opposed? No, that means that all are in favor and this motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so thanks, Judah. And now we'll move into a review of our strategic framework that will be concluding this year. And you'll all note that on the agenda, this will be followed by a review of our upcoming new strategic framework. So before we move into the future, let's have a look at the past and present. So over to you, Judah.
Thank you, Ruth. So, as the board knows, CPATA developed a major strategic framework to cover the 23 to 25 period. So it's a good time as we have our December meeting to reflect on the work that's been done to date, take stock, and it helps us align for our next steps. And so what I'm proposing to do is spend a few minutes just going over in high level some of the accomplishments that this organization, this board has helped steer us towards. And with thanks to all the heavy lifting of staff to operationalize these developments. But as you know, in 2023, this board approved a strategic framework that was focused on 5 items. It was around regulatory and organizational infrastructure, professional development and competency, professional regulation, relationships and communication, and governance, which included fiscal responsibility. It's been a busy time for the regulator, and all of these highlights are actually in the materials starting at page 67. I'm not going to show all of this on screen today because we do have the materials. They're readily accessible for people who may be following along or watching after, and they can download them or use them as they see fit. But starting with the build out, because really this period was focused on getting CPATA from startup towards scale up so that we could continue to operate in a sustainable manner in the public interest. And that started with making sure that we had the right regulatory infrastructure in place. Some of the accomplishments in 2023, including building out the team. And as you know, we're now almost at what I would see as our full staff component for the foreseeable future. We now have a full-time CEO. We have insourced our CFO function. We have a fractional general counsel for professional regulation. We have incredible regulatory administrative staff and an amazing deputy registrar, director of communications, and director of operations as well. So it's a small but mighty team. And we've been trying to focus on us becoming a learning organization. And not everyone from this organization had come to us from regulation. And so we've been learning while doing, creating lunch and learns and creating learning opportunities, as well as cross-functional opportunities for the team to learn. We've also built out the regulatory infrastructure outward facing for the publics we serve. We have a new online platform. We have enhanced licensee portals that are easier for our licensees to use. It also has an improved public register, which is helping members of the public connect and identify licensees who are best suited to serve them. The new portal goes beyond bare minimum requirements of a regulator and now includes the ability to search by language, by geography, by industry served. And so that helps connect innovators with the professional services that they require. We have also developed a new annual licensee report to start to better understand the professions who we serve. As we came online, there really wasn't enough data to understand who is really providing those vital patent and trademark services for the publics in Canada. We're starting to get that data now, and we'll be able to track it year by year, given that we'll be asking licensees to confirm this information on an annual basis. It's not a big time commitment for licensees to do this. It's only a few minutes, but collectively, they help us get a better snapshot of the professions and how they can serve the publics. In terms of the regulatory group ourselves, most of our foundational years have been focused on professional development and competency areas. These have been about the core areas that you're seeing in the headlines across all areas of the professions for Canada right now, about reducing unnecessary barriers to entry, both for foreign trained applicants and for Canadians wishing to join these vital professions. We have created new standards that facilitate entry for qualified, internationally trained professionals. And we've seen case studies of individuals who've been able to enter with a right touch approach, with barriers out of the way that previously were there and that were arbitrary. We've also created technical and professional competency profiles. And so, for the first time, these important professions now have a guide as to what it takes and what is expected of one to become a professional, be it on the trademark or patent agent side. This was a huge undertaking conducted with the professions to understand what they do all day. My favorite book, Richard Scarry's What Do People Do All Day, can now have a page for patent agent and trademark agents. It's an incredible development, particularly for those who are looking at entering the professions. We launched new qualifying exams that are also based on those guides, based on those competency and profiles, and so that we have tied the entryways into the profession with what we would expect people need to acquire by way of knowledge and skills to succeed in the professions as well. We're now looking at the pathways into the professions in terms of the work placements and training plans generally that are the ways where people absorb those knowledge and skills. We've consulted with licensees who are very generous in their time participating in focus groups, completing surveys, or providing written submissions. And what they shared with us was vital so that we can figure out how to enhance training into the professions that allows people to absorb this core knowledge and skills in ways that are meaningful and that prepare them for success more effectively and efficiently. For the coming years, we'll see that there's work to be done there, and that will flow through in the next strategic plan as well. So we've had lots to be done on professional development and competency, and we expect that we'll be continuing that work on the go forward. Turning to professional regulation, which is the other main side of what professional regulators do, we have set up a proactive and principled approach to respond to issues that may arise, but also to respond to licensees themselves who may have questions to make sure that they are practicing ethically and proactively. And so we have an ethics inquiry mechanism so that agents can reach out proactively to us to ask about practice management questions they may have and ethical issues that they may be facing. We continue to release articles that are available online based on these inquiries we receive so that all within the profession can learn from the areas that we continue to engage with. And we've also released a new code of conduct video series this year, which was developed with input from members of the professions as well. So while it's premature to consider rule amendments, which may be required over time, we're building that strengthened foundational understanding that there are rules that apply to patent agents and trademark agents. And rather than using them as a stick, we're trying to develop resources so people can appreciate how they play an active part in day-to-day practice. We do occasionally get inquiries about the conduct of agents, and there too, we're being proportionate and proactive. Before people even submit a complaint, we have the opportunity at times to seek to address whatever concerns may be raised in a mediated or more proactive way, where we can sometimes help reduce friction between agent and client or get a relationship back on track by simply facilitating some conversations. Where that's not available or where that is not successful, we do have, of course, a formal complaints investigation and discipline process. And this strategic plan has been our year of firsts in that regard. We've had our first investigations that have been determined by me as registrar to be outside our jurisdiction or frivolous or abusive. So we've had those early systems engaged for the first times. We've had our first investigations conducted in both English and in French. We've had our first interim suspensions to protect the public where there were areas of potential risk. And we've had our first discipline committee hearings. We've also moved into the space around unauthorized practice. And we couldn't have gotten there just in time or soon enough because not shortly after opening our doors, there was a robust cyber fraud that hit Canada, targeting users of our trademark system primarily. And it started with people impersonating licensees and our trademark agents, and we were there to respond, to name and shame fraudsters, to protect the public. And it's been very gratifying, I think, for the entire team to see the notes of thanks that are coming in from everyday consumers and everyday Canadians thanking us for actually putting out there on our webpage and via search engines so that when people check to see whether these purported firms are actually legitimate entities, they are quickly discovering that we're there saying which ones are clearly fraudulent, and that helps protect the public from true fraud. By the numbers, we continue to be busy, but not overly busy as far as regulators go. Unauthorized practice has by far and away been our biggest area of regulatory concern. We had nearly 200 unauthorized practice issues coming in primarily through these cyber frauds last year. This year, we've already exceeded 200 inquiries around them. So that continues to be a high volume area for us. When it comes to ethics inquiries, as we continue to build goodwill with the professions and knowledge among our licensees that we offer these proactive services, we're seeing that we're being taken up on that offer. What started out with only 4 ethics inquiries in the first half year of our operations in 2021 has led to more like 20 to 30 inquiries thereafter every year. Those help, of course, spawn these articles, and we have this virtuous circle of goodwill that comes through it. Agent conduct inquiries have also seen an uptick, which is expected as people come to understand that there is a regulator in place with a complaints and investigations mechanism. This year, we're trending to our highest number with about 25 to date, but not all of those will turn into complaints. And so our complaint numbers remain under 10 per year, which results in very low numbers being referred to discipline for hearings. So all in all, our focus to date has really been on developing those competencies for agents, developing the ethical and practical frameworks for agents, and building in those competencies for current agents and for future generations of agents. And that has been the bulk of the work, with some professional regulatory work as well, but the most of it around fraud prevention, which has been welcomed and in the public interest, and that we have done in partnership with stakeholders. And so now is a good time for me to turn to some of that engagement work that we've been doing. And some of it did come in the professional regulation side, working with the Government of Canada, with other regulators, and with IPIC and licensees. We continue to support the continued evolution of patent agent and trademark agent privilege, and will continue to do so. We've also worked with insurance markets and different providers of insurance to make sure that there is a robust market of professional liability insurance available to agents. We made professional liability insurance mandatory for licensees. That was in the public interest. That protects both consumers and licensees themselves. And based on consultation, we were able to right-size the insurance needs for this group. Since doing so, through this strategic plan, we've seen the expansion and opening of these markets, and we've seen a very healthy marketplace for insurance with multiple providers. For some who are dual regulated, such as those in Quebec and BC, there has actually been no additional cost for insurance from those who are practicing law. And for others, there are more than one provider to choose from, in all instances. And so this has been a healthy development for those seeking insurance and healthy for the public to know that there is coverage and that coverage is required for those providing these professional services. We've also spent a lot of time on areas that are near and dear to licensees and working carefully and closely with licensees. We have various ways of making sure that licensees become aware of our activities and are able to engage on matters. We have our newsletters, we've had webinars, we have webcast board meetings, we've had many consultations around insurance, what it means for CPATA to be a public interest regulator, the development of competency profiles, our pathways to licensure, our annual licensee report, and demographic survey have all been subject to consultation with licensees. It's been a very engaged profession, and we learn and become better as a result of that input. We've also had firm engagement through CEO and director initiatives, presentations with different association type entities on behalf of patent and trademark agents. And we've also engaged with government and with CPO in various ways on a very regular basis so that we're aware of the developments happening that are quickly moving in the patent agent and trademark agent space and in the services space being provided by our intellectual property office. At the same time, we serve multiple publics, and so we've been trying to start to build out our space in the IP ecosystem network. We've been working with different funders so that people can understand the nature of the practice of patent agent work and trademark agent work and the types of IP strategy our licensees are able and expected to provide. We've worked with various IP organizations to better understand what levels of IP literacy exist in Canada and how these groups and us will be working to enhance that literacy over time. And we've been working so that those who are intermediaries can better understand the role of the regulator and how they can use our public register to connect innovators with competent patent agents and trademark agents. At the same time, it's a big world. And so we've been working with our international colleagues to understand the regulatory trends happening in patent agent and trademark agent regulation in the US, in England and Wales, in Australia and New Zealand, and from time to time in other jurisdictions as well. We've tried to make sure that we understand regulatory trends that could impact our licensees who may be dual regulated by working collaboratively with law societies and with engineering regulators as well. And so our outreach has been busy, and it's been invaluable for us to better understand where we currently stand and where there are opportunities to build in the public interest over time. All of this work is supported by best-in-class governance, in my opinion. We have updated bylaws to streamline them. We have revised governance policies so that they are accessible and digestible. We have election processes that are managed effectively using an independent election commissioner to ensure fairness. We have committee recruitments and appointments where we are getting excellent candidates, and those appointment processes are running smoothly. We have a board process and a committee processes that are all running very smoothly. We have continuing director and staff training, including the launch of director education resource portals for those who serve on the board so that it is not a one and done. We all know that this is evergreen work that we need to be doing. We've also recently developed a conflicts register for directors, which is a proactive tool to help reduce conflict risks, which is a best governance practice, but only one tool among others. For example, just earlier today, you heard our chair open this meeting by asking about conflicts and noting that there would be conflicts coming up in the appointments processes in the meeting. So we are alive to those risks and doing our best to reduce them. We also have developed self-evaluation processes for directors and for the board itself. And we are going to be rolling out similar processes for committees for those individuals serving on committees to complete self-evaluation surveys. And of course, as we heard earlier, every year there's a CEO evaluation process in place. The mechanisms have altered somewhat in that we now have a formalized working group, but the mechanisms remain the same, with there being accountability to me, to the board, to all of the board, and with all of the board making its decisions collectively around that process. Finally, a rougher, difficult point for this organization was around fiscal responsibility. I think it's going to become regulatory lore that this group started with zero funding. Licensees had to start to take on debt effectively through directors who were putting the costs of starting this regulator on their personal credit cards. It was hard for us to find a bank. We needed the government of Canada to effectively backstop us by becoming the co-signer on a line of credit when we did have access to one. These are difficult startup moments. There was a part-time CEO who worked tirelessly and with no actual promise that there would be full compensation if this thing didn't actually launch. These are not the normal, nor are they the best practices to start a regulator. And so we started from a bit of a fiscal deficit, which ultimately had to be borne by licensees. At the same time, this is a complex area of regulation. It is federal, it is bilingual, it covers both patent agent and trademark agent practices, and it didn't start from scratch. It was taking on existing licensees. It was introducing these licensees to a new form of regulation, and it was looking to right size all of the regulatory mechanisms in a mandate created by an act of parliament that added areas of responsibility to us to modernize the regulation of patent agents and trademark agents for Canada. This is a lot that needed to be undertaken, and I'm proud of the work that we have done. This did come with the need to increase licensing fees and to do so quickly and significantly, so that we would have the means to not just build the regulator for its purpose, but also build regulatory reserves that regulators all require in order to be fiscally sustainable. As we're going to discuss in a few minutes, this has been accomplished in a way that has enabled the organization to grow into its space organically without going past its regulatory ambit, in a way that remains agile for an organization with this level of responsibility and remains very fiscally prudent for an organization with this type of mandate. And so I'm proud of the work that we have done through this strategic plan. You'll see there's an annual work plan as well. Every year we prepare an annual work plan at the request of the board. Every year it is shared with the board. I'm not planning on presenting on it today, but just it gives you a sense of the type of work that staff does to operationalize all of these areas of responsibility. And those are there so that we can all see the work that's been accomplished to date and have an understanding of where the strategic framework will be heading for 2026 to 2028.
Judah, that's fantastic. And honestly, when we hear this recap and think back to where we were and where we've come, it truly is astounding. And when we look through that work plan and see the tremendous heavy lifting that you and your team have done, we are just so proud of all of you. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. Floor is open for any questions or comments or any discussion on our progress to date before we move into the decision on our upcoming strategic plan. Okay, directors, I'm not seeing any comments. So again, Judah, just on behalf of us all, thank you. Thank you. And let's now talk about what's coming up next.
Well, it's everything that we have started needs to be maintained. And there are also some additional areas that this regulator is tasked with that need to be built out as well. And so that is where our strategic framework for 2026 to 28 takes us. And it's summarized in one page at page 110. And what you will see, and that what the public will be able to see now that it is online, is that we've created a backgrounder for this document as well in the form of a memo. It starts at page 100. Strategic plans are maybe one page, but it takes a lot of lifting to get to identifying what the core areas ought to be. And this memo at page 100 reviews where we came from, reviews the prior strategic plan, reviews where we need to go next, and also considers areas that were under consideration for this strategic plan and provides some background so that those who are curious can also learn that there are some areas that we are not moving into right now. The mandate has to be carefully construed and really focused, particularly in this stage of a relatively young regulator. And so, what you see past that textual memo, which of course is available online, is at page 110, you have in the English the strategic plan for the next 26 to 28 period. And the priority here moves from the startup to scale up to really focusing on core mandate of access to competent and ethical patent and trademark agents. The focus again is on the professional development and competency side. So we're going to be continuing the work around enhancing pathways into the professions. We're continuing to build off of what we heard from licensees to try to make sure that placements and training plans are robust and that people have the best opportunities to learn through work placement the skills and knowledge they need to succeed as patent agents and trademark agents. We're also at the same time going to be exploring potential new entryways into the professions. There are all sorts of different ways globally that patent agents and trademark agents are able to acquire the skills and knowledges they need. And so we'll be looking to how this is done in other jurisdictions as well and what might be appropriate for Canada in the longer term. But that continues to be a slower moving initiative and one that is not likely to come back to decision anytime soon. We're going to continue to consider the practice requirements, including developing a return to active practice requirement. So we know what those in active practice need to do. They need to adhere to our rules of professional conduct and act ethically. When people go to inactive status, though, there's a risk of skills degradation. And so typically regulators will look to develop return to active practice requirements, and we'll be consulting with the professions about what that should look like for those who are currently inactive for various reasons, and at what point they may need additional requirements before being readmitted to full-time active practice. We're also going to be strengthening licensing competencies by looking at continuing professional development. As you all know, that was initially planned for the previous strategic plan. But as we looked at the exams and as we looked at the need to develop competency profiles, it was decided that we should wait and get more data and get more experience before moving to continuing professional development. And so we're going to be looking at what would be a right touch policy around the provision of or requirement of continuing professional development for patent agents and trademark agents. In Canada, this is a frequent part of the social contract where licensees help to lead their area of regulation, but where the public expects that these professionals will maintain certain competencies through continuous learning. And so we'll be talking, and the board will be talking, and then we will be collectively seeking input from professions and others around what might be the appropriate level of continuing professional development policy for these licensees. And so we'll be back to the professions around this area as well. Another area that helps this profession in terms of its professional identity, and that we know licensees have been doing well before the creation of this college, is pro bono. Professions often provide services to those who otherwise cannot access them. That is one of the hallmarks of being a professional. And so we have seen others within the space in Canada promote the ethos of pro bono. And regulators may have a role to play here. And so here too, we'll be discussing and consulting with the professions about pro bono, about what experiences people have, what access to give back may already be in place, and where a regulator may be able to assist to facilitate access to these key services provided by patent agents and trademark agents. So it's going to be a busy season from 26 to 28 when we look at those core areas of professional development. On professional regulation, we're continuing the core areas that have been important since inception. We're going to be continuing to advance our position that patent agent and trademark agent privilege, which is truly the client's privilege to have, needs to be sized to the areas where patent agent and trademark agent services are provided. We know that there's a slight potential disconnect now, which is by virtue of having the privilege grant created before the creation of the college, but there are some updates required to reflect the competencies that have been noted and that we expect our professionals to be able to provide to the public. And so we'll be continuing to work on that with our partners. We're also going to continue to address complaints and discipline as they come in our proactive, proportionate, professional regulatory environment. And we're going to continue to protect against unauthorized practice and fraud. We've had some interesting cases come our way, and we've been pretty effective so far at making sure that these online frauds are flashpoints as opposed to major fires, and we'll continue to be vigilant in protecting the public against these harms. How we do this is through effective relationships, best-in-class governance, and continuing to maintain appropriate regulatory infrastructure and a top-notch team. So when we look to relationships and communications, there will be lots of outreach over the next few years with licensees and with others in the IP ecosystem. We're going to be continuing to educate those that we exist, because young regulators need to make that known to those who are out there. But we're, as I've mentioned, going to be engaging with licensees on many core areas that would impact them directly. And we'll have more to say about that both now and in coming meetings. On governance, we're going to continue to address fiscal responsibility. And this is where we're going to be looking at right-sizing the annual licensing fees. As we'll get to later today, we've done the hard work. And by we, I mean this board and the professions themselves have done the hard work of making sure that this organization can be sustainable. It went from financially unsustainable to sustainable in a very short time period. And now we can look to what the right-sized annual licensing fee should be that will ease some of the burden as we now have healthy reserves. And so we're going to talk about reserves later today. And assuming that the board is comfortable with a new reserve policy, we will be able to look towards implementing bylaw changes regarding fees with the view towards moderating those fees over the next, starting in 2027. And we'll have more to discuss about that when we turn to budgeting and reserves later today. We're also continuing to regulate via effective board and committee governance that requires evergreen training. And we're always working to maintain board and committee composition. And in 2026, we expect that there will be minister appointments to this board, as well as potentially new committees, appointments or reappointments, which the governance committee will be facilitating that process and bringing recommendations to the board in 2026. We also, of course, have elections not in 2026, but in 2027 and 2028 for elected licensee members of the board of directors. We're going to, of course, continue to rely on the team. And in doing so, we're going to continue to right-size our technology, our people, and processes. We're also going to be working on better understanding where we can facilitate efforts to enable access to services regardless of one's background, as well as make sure that we as an organization are advancing EDI and Indigenous reconciliation within our mandate. And we will be conducting some research in partnership with others based on our demographic data to better understand licensee demographics and consumer needs. Put in economic terms, we're trying to understand both the supply and demand sides to make sure that we can facilitate having a meeting point that serves Canadians and serves Canada. And so it's an ambitious few years. You can see that here too, we have an activity plan. Rather than presenting this board with an annual plan, we thought we would present an activity plan that reflects this cycle. It's a longer cycle, and the annual parts of that cycle are reflected in there. But we also have the longer term pieces built in. And what I'm proposing is that we'll use that as the annual work plan. And I will provide updates, and the team will provide updates using this document on the go forward. But this helps you get a sense both at the 10,000 foot level and at a more granular level as to where we're heading and how we're going to get there. And so we do have a motion, and this is all, of course, material that has been worked through over the past several months with the board. And so this is all being, finessed and discussed, debated, refined, and honed by these directors. And so I want that to be absolutely clear as we bring the motion. The motion is in the materials in the agenda at page 3 in the English. The motion is simply be it resolved that the board approve the 2026 to 2028 strategic framework as presented, and will now pass back to our chair.
Well, Judah, thank you. That was a really great walkthrough of what we're planning to do together over the next 2 years. And so thank you for that. That's fantastic. As Judah mentioned, the board has worked together with our management team to create this strategic framework. So we came together in April or June, I forget. We came together in the summer to have a direction setting conversation, and so have that big blue sky conversation of all of the things that we could be doing. What are the things we should be doing over the next 2 years? And then we came together again in November with a revised or a refined draft, and now we're seeing the outcome of all of that input by the board in this plan that's before you today. So the motion that Judah read, I'm going to ask for a director to make that. Be it resolved that the board approves the 2026-2028 CPATA strategic framework as presented. Could I have someone make that motion? Tom, and I see Iris there as a seconder. That motion is on the table. We've heard lots of discussion. We've had lots of discussion. Opening the floor now to directors. Any questions, thoughts? Just wanting to make sure that you feel really clear and well informed as you make this decision. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I was just as Judah was taking us through the history of the landscape of everything that we've accomplished and the plans going forward. I'm really struck by how much has been accomplished and how much is on the is upcoming for a CEO and staff that is really minimalist. And I just wanted to endorse what you said earlier, Ruth, and that is this management and staff are just I really appreciate all the work they're doing and how they've remained focused on the objectives that the board has set. And I'm really enthusiastic about this strategic framework. So I heartily endorse it. Thank you.
Oh, that's great, Tom. And boy, do I ever agree. This is one powerhouse team. We are very blessed to have them. Any other thoughts or comments before I call for a vote on our strategic plan? Okay, well, Tom, thanks for summing that up. I think you speak for everyone. That's wonderful. So that motion is on the table. I'm going to call for a vote. Are there any objections to approving the strategic framework?
None. Agreement.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Seeing no others raised, that means that this motion has been approved. So congratulations, Judah. You have a plan. There
Thank
go.
you. It's exciting.
It was
Thank you.
really great. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so next up is we're going to talk about our financial reserves policy. And Judah, I know that you and Sean, I think, are going to take that because it looks like Bob is still involved in his Senate meeting. And so I'm going to just hand it right over to the two of you. Within this financial reserves policy section, we do have a motion, which is be it resolved that the board approves the revised financial reserves policy as presented. So won't ask for the motion just yet. Let's have some introductory comments. Then I'll get that motion on the table and open it for board discussion. Over to you, Judah and Sean.
Thank you, Ruth. I'll present this item. Sean is going to be presenting the budget. Both of these are being brought to you through the Audit and Risk Committee. You have directors serving on that committee, including Iris Almeida-Cote and Scott Jolliffe. But we also have independent members who are not directors who are serving. We have Maureen Rogers, who's the CEO of the company that gives us the Weather Network, and for whom I won't blame them for today's weather, but I was grateful to learn of today's weather before I hit the road this morning. And we also have Bob Plamondon. So we've mentioned Bob. He's currently on the Senate Standing Committee on Audit and Oversight. He's one of only two external members, and that is where he needed to be today in the Red Chamber. He also is a well-known accountant, independent board member, consultant. He's got decades of experience in financial policy. He currently also serves on the board of OP Trust and has served on the board of the National Capital Commission and many other areas. And so we are very lucky as a regulator to have a model that enables us to have recruited for and obtained the expertise of external individuals to complement the skill set that this board has and to help bring materials forward to the board. It's just one other level of development that helps to facilitate the board's work. And so when we turn to this area that the Audit and Risk Committee has been considering, it's with respect to reserves. Reserves is a topic that doesn't get very much attention in everyday conversation, but they are core to regulators. Regulators operate through the fees generated mostly from licensing fees for those who are parts of professions. Those can vary depending on the number of licensees in a profession and the risks that or areas that need to be covered by regulators will vary by mandate. CPATA has a robust mandate and requires funds. We're also small, though. And so any small change to our environment can impact our ability to function. Any major case or any increase in volume, any change to staff situations, any change to costs from the vendors we use can materially impact us year over year. At the same time, our bylaws, which set our fees, go through a robust process with the Department of Justice and must be published through the Gazette. And so it takes time for us to set annual fees. And like every other regulator, we try to bring cost certainty to licensees. And so it's in this framework that we, like other professional regulators, need to develop reserves. And like many other regulators, we have decided on developing two reserves, and these have been in place for the last couple of years. One relates to operations, and this is a fund that is there to sustain the regulator in times of potential emergency, but also in case there are particular one-off situations that may require attention. For example, if we have somebody go on a leave, their parental leaves, or there are others, it is a backstop so that we can keep our annual budgets consistent as possible, but address one-time operational changes or other risks that may face the organization. The other type of fund that we have available is with respect to professional regulation as well as unauthorized practice areas. And so this is meant to be there in case we get either a major increase in volume or we have a major or more than a major case at a time that require workup. What we have done is we have looked to those reserves, and initially the Audit and Risk Committee set what I think could fairly be described as startup aspirational levels for each. And I'm pleased to see that since we have modernized our approach and tried to make sure that we could build with licensing fees that would build both the regulator and the rainy day fund, we are now increasingly moving to longer term sustainable levels for the organization. So as we were moving towards that, the Audit and Risk Committee for the past, I would say about 12 months or so, Sean, has been looking at what should be the appropriate levels for both of these reserve funds for long-term sustainability for the organization. To do this, we built out different models that considered our increased data as we continue to operate around regulatory trends, around number of complaints, around complexity of complaints, around new unauthorized practice waves that were hitting us, around number of licensees, whether they were going up, down, staying the same, etc. We also looked to what are regulatory best practices. And so Sean did Herculean work as our CFO. He looked to the reserve policies of just over 50 regulators in Canada to get a sense of what are some of the things that they consider when developing reserve policies. And then we looked to our situation as well and worked carefully with the Audit and Risk Committee and had touch points with the board as well to try to understand what would be appropriate. On those 50 regulators, there's a vast range of different approaches that can be taken. And so we tried to hone in to those closest to us, which typically tend to be smaller regulators. Smaller regulators have budgets between $1.5 and $4 or $5 million. Larger regulators can easily go over $100 million, but we looked at them all to understand approaches. And it's clear that the regulatory best practice is to have an operational reserve that has a minimum of 6 months of operating expenses. And so what we are putting forward today is a revised reserve policy that moves the needle towards that regulatory best practices and requires a 6-month operating as the target for the operational reserve. At the same time, we looked at how different regulators manage complaints and discipline activity through professional regulatory reserves. Not all regulators have separate reserves. Some of them have a global fund, but we looked at how different regulators ultimately create rainy day funds that they know they will need to call on to address those 1 in 10 year, 1 in 20 year, 5 in 10 year. It all varies depending on the regulator, but how they set money aside to deal with investigations and hearings, legal contingencies, or various discipline-related costs that may arise. In our case, complex unauthorized or high-volume unauthorized practice situations. Ultimately, regulatory reserves in the 50 regulators we looked at range from zero, which is not prudent, to over $10 million. And we looked at what were those closest aligned to us again before arriving at the recommendation that there should be a regulatory reserve set at $2 million for this organization. The reason we have picked that number is multifaceted, but ultimately, one of the main considerations right now is that we are seeing complaints and we are seeing unauthorized practice cases, and we don't have a very long track record. And so it's important to maintain a healthy number. This number is prudent. It's not, it's almost the Goldilocks standard, but with data. This is a Goldilocks standard that looked and found other similarly sized regulators, similarly situated regulators to us, focused on legal services, for example, with much higher funds in place, even though their licensee counts were similar. We know that there are some with lower reserve amounts, but those tend to be in areas where either they are underfunded or where their risk profile may be different or more established. So we have picked a number that is fiscally prudent, but won't break the bank. Because as you'll see in the financial reporting, our projection is that with fees in line that are going to be decided, or a budget that's going to be decided today, if budget 2026 stays on course and we don't need to call on any reserve funds in 2026, we expect to meet these benchmarks by end of 2026 and be able to consider fee reductions for 2027. And so we really do feel like this is a right touch approach to setting of reserves for the organization. We are being as transparent as we can be. And for those who are interested in the approach, there is an underlying memo that describes the rationale, as well as an overview of our research. And so you'll see that there's a chart that reviews and provides all of the regulators other than those who asked that we keep their materials highly confidential because they were in progress or not publicly available. And so you have all of those materials available to the public and the recommended revisions to the policies in the materials. And so with that, I'll pass it back to our chair.
Thanks very much, Judah. And again, this is something that we discussed at length in November with our audit committee chair present as well. And so what we're seeing today is the refined document that we're going to be asked to approve based on all of our prior discussion on this. So the motion is, be it resolved, that the board approves the revised financial reserves policy as presented. Could I have someone make that motion, please? It is, and Tom has seconded. That motion is on the table. The item is open for discussion. So, directors, any questions, comments, thoughts? Tom?
Judah, I was just on the professional and regulatory reserves. I gather that you've looked at other regulators and tried to, as you said, set a kind of a Goldilocks standard for our organization. Going forward, what is the plan for reviewing that level, which is proposed to be 2 million? As we establish more of a track record going forward, and will that criteria become more prevalent going forward? And how often are you expecting to be conducting a review of that amount so that we can ensure that the Goldilocks standard that's being based theoretically on what other regulators are doing actually reflects what's on the ground for us?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. We are going to continue to review that at the audit and risk committee level on a fairly frequent basis. But I think it's also important for the public and for this group to understand that this is a trend that needs some time for us to consider over further time. It's not just the data from the other regulators or the lack of a regulatory track record that went into these decisions. It was also estimates about what just one major case could end up costing an organization. And we know that they can get into the seven figures. We know that that is unlikely, but it is a possibility that a regulator needs to be ready for at any given moment. And so there are certain stopgaps that we just need to have that sort of create a minimum floor for having reserves ready at any moment. So we'll continue to monitor and we'll continue to make sure that this is fit for purpose. At the same time, we do know that it only takes one or two to start to have to dig in. And so, for sure, some of the key factors will be, do we have the need to call on a regulatory reserve? If not, is the ultimate level appropriate? Are we seeing changes in volume or in complexity of our existing resources? Are we able to budget effectively for professional regulatory initiatives outside of calling on the reserve for any of our what we're considering day-to-day matters? All of those factors are going to continue to be regularly reviewed by the Audit and Risk Committee. Every year, that's going to be something that is going to be coming up. And if it turns out that we need further resourcing for professional regulatory work, then there will already be a question about, does that go from our annual budget process, or given where fees may be kept at, do we want to be looking to reserves, as some regulators sometimes do, to cross-subsidize over time? So all of that will be reviewed on an ongoing basis. I would say that for the operating, it's more a question of looking at where the best practice is generally. We have found it for now. It is 6 months. We don't expect that to change in the near future, but we'll be continuing to monitor what the best practice is.
It's great, Judah. Thank you. And thanks for the question, Tom. Any other questions or thoughts from directors before I call for a vote on the reserves policy? Okay, seeing none, I am going to ask if anyone objects to approving the revised financial reserve policy as presented. Okay, seeing none, that means all are in favor and that motion has passed. So thanks very much, everyone. And now, with that big financial decision having been made, we're on to the next one, which is our 2026 budget. So, Sean, thank you for once again providing an absolutely excellent package. Oh my gosh, it's extremely thorough. Everything that you've put together for us has just been so helpful in providing us with the information that we need to feel confident about the decision that we're being asked to make today. So again, thank you for that. And I know all directors have read the package, but over to you, Sean, if there's anything that you'd like to highlight or chat with us about before I put the motion on the table and open it for director discussion.
Sure. Thanks, Ruth. Really, there's probably just 5 or 6 main points I'd like to highlight. Just kind of bring them out of the presentation a little bit, for sure. And the first one is around the background. This year, we actually started the detailed budget planning probably a month early, where we knew that this was going to be the start of the new strategic plan. We were going to be going into a potential call for comment on fees. We really wanted to make sure that we had all of our ducklings following mama and all in a line. So back in September, we'd had a board strategic planning session. The Audit and Risk Committee met to go over like the first initial very high level presentation on the assumptions. We met again, and the Audit and Risk Committee met again in October. And then in November, we really did some heavy lifting, first with the board in the strategic planning session. And then the Audit and Risk Committee met on the 24th to fine-tune the budget that we're looking at today. Okay. And the major change since I guess, at but kind of in that very narrow window between when the board met in November and then the Audit and Risk Committee met, was that the Government of Canada released the CPI rate, and it came out to be 2.2% from October this year to October last year. So that then we took that number and we've increased all of the individual fees, which you'll see on the last page of the package, which really the number, or I guess the fee that everybody looks at is really our Class 1 practicing fee or licensing fee is going to go from $1,836, which was up 2% from our $1,800 the year before, and it's going to go up to $1,877 for 2026. So that's up 2.2%. Okay. I've got my notes here.
And just on that note, Sean, as per the bylaws, we increase the license fees by that government rate every year.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. So and that's why we had to wait to the middle of November in order to get that final number.
Yeah.
And I will say the intention is for next year to hopefully, if we do have time and there are changes to the bylaws, we're going to change that to September. So that gives us another month of timing to get things done a little quicker.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'll just run through some of the forecasted revenue items. Really, the Class 1 license fees there on page 125. You'll see a big drop from this year's budget of 66,000, but a small increase from the forecast. What has happened here is in 2025 we saw a decrease of about 4% in our trademark Class 1 agents, but a lot of them trickle down into the Class 2, Class 3, Class 4s. So for next year, we've budgeted obviously the 2.2 fee increase, and we've conservatively gone with another 4% decrease in the trademark Class 1 practicing licensees. Now that's very conservative. We do hope that the number won't go down as much as that, but we won't know till the beginning of April. So really this year saw about 43 less Class 1 agents, about a $77,000 reduction, and we're picking up about 65 of that with the 2.2% increase. So it kind of evens out year over year by forecast, but it does look a little different in the budget. Other areas that we increased, the exam fees have all gone up by 2.2%. But in talking with Jen Slobodkin and her team, we've actually seen I'd say a solid increase in the number of Class 3 agents that have joined. She just told me this morning that we've already approved 90 agents this year, and there's still 27 more in the queue to have their documents reviewed and approved. A lot of those is just a matter of getting the documentation lined up. So we have increased based on those figures, we've increased the exam figures, not the dollars, but the number of writers, the number of papers that will be written. So we're expecting a modest increase there as well. Application fees, they tend to be a bit of a boat on the water, swelling up and down. Last year we saw a large increase in application fees as our licensees changed categories. This year we've seen a lot of new application fees for Class 3, so it's kind of offset. We do expect that as we mature into the future, these numbers will become more stable. So this is one thing that we're keeping an eye on. Another area is the interest income. I just saw pop up when we were in a meeting that the Government of Canada left the interest rates the same, so that's a little bit of a help for us. We've budgeted a conservative $100,000 next year, which will be based on 4 million in GICs at 2.5%. And it just happens to correlate that we have budgeted the 100,000 into operations, but we've also budgeted the increase in the operating reserve of about 100,000. So some regulators will use interest earned on reserves to cover the reserves. We put it into operations to try to keep intention to keep the fees down, but the two will offset next year. And then finally, the regulatory discipline income. This isn't something we budget. We've only received it twice in our first 4.5 years. It's just if we do have a hearing and we're awarded some costs, we will put those in. But to be very ultra conservative, we're not budgeting anything in that area. Okay. And then there's just a couple of expense areas I wanted to highlight, some of the bigger changes from year over year. The first one, which probably everyone is probably asked about, is the board of directors meeting and remuneration expenses. The actual remuneration year over year is very similar. What we've seen this year is an increase in our quote unquote meeting costs. So the audio visual costs, the translation costs, meeting room, catering, those types of things. We still get a really, 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 really good rate on our hotel rooms in Ottawa at the Lord Elgin, but we do, but the ancillary costs around the meetings have tended to go up a bit. And also for next year, we've budgeted for all the directors to come to or go to Ottawa for IPIC's next annual meeting, which I believe is their 100th anniversary. So that's why we have factored that in. And then we've got a few areas that are going down, such as discipline and hearing, meeting and remuneration. So this is as Judah mentioned earlier, we haven't seen as many hearings or complaints as we originally thought we were going to see when we built the budgets. We've ratcheted back some of those legal fees, the hearing costs, and things of that nature, with the intention to have more of a flat year over year legal discipline budget, and then we have the 2 million in reserve if there's something extraordinary that we need to lean on. Okay. Also under legal fees, next year we think the plan is to have a bylaw update. So we factored in legal fees for that, and also for some additional policy support we might need from the discipline side. We've factored in a bit of budget for that as well. Okay. The next area that we're still focusing really significantly on is the registration / exam and competency areas. So we couldn't say this is a public service announcement, but we couldn't do what we do for our licensees, for our Class 3 agents, for those people writing the exams without the support of our exam advisory group and the subject matter experts. And there's a lot of them. There's almost 100 when we factor in all the different factors, all the different work they do throughout the year. So we're looking at the way that we remunerate them. Right now it's a fixed, like everybody gets paid the same, but it ends up some people do a lot more work than others depending on what they've been assigned. So we're looking at changing that up so that there's a base fee and then almost a fee for service on top of that. So that we think that's going to increase our costs a little bit, but we'll have to see how next year plays out with the exams. Okay. And then the big increase, of course, we've mentioned already, is salaries. Judah mentioned that the intention is to bring on another administrative support professional. We posted the job Monday on Indeed, and all day I've been getting about every 15, 20 minutes, I get an email that says somebody else has applied. So I'm really going to lean on McConnell, our HR assistants.
Well, I hear it's an
to help us
excellent
through.
employer.
We're great.
That's
And then just under the salaries, I think Judah mentioned that we've budgeted a 5% increase for staff across the board. And really just, I was thinking about this morning, it's really, that may seem high, but when we factor in the fact that staff all work from home, we don't get bonuses, there's no perks. We see each other 2, maybe 3 times a year, and there's no Christmas party. So we work hard, and when you factor all the in, 5% really does make sense when you're looking at both cost of living and CPI each year. Okay. And then again, inflationary increases, we've seen CPI at 2.2, but a lot of the vendors that we use, such as legal or IT or other professionals, they tend to increase their rates a little bit more than CPI. So we've gone with a 3 to 5% range on a lot of inflationary type items. And I've gone through and looked at numerous contracts to see what the accelerator fees are and things of the nature. So that's where that comes in. And we've left the $100,000 contingency in, as Judah mentioned earlier. That's really if something extraordinary happens in our operations throughout the year, that is there to cover that as well. So we don't have to kind of rob Peter to pay Paul type situation. Okay. So that's the operating side. From the financial position or the balance sheet side, really the 2 numbers that we focus on are cash. cash or cash and GICs. So you'll see probably on page 130, you'll see just a pro forma statement of financial position. You'll see our investments in cash are going from 3 million or 3.3 million this year to about 4 million next year. So that's my goal next year, is to have that 4 million sitting in the GIC generating interest. And then the only other number really that fluctuates year over year is our reserve figures. And you'll see we've talked about next year there should be a surplus of, if all goes well, about 740,000. So that will bring our reserves from 3.1, hopefully at the end of this year, up to 3.8. And as we talked about, and you'll see on the next page, in order to fully fund our reserves in 2026, we need 3.6 million. So that's 1.6 for the operating, based on 6 months of operating expenses, and then also the 2 million for the professional regulation, unauthorized practice, and litigation reserve fund. So, and then one quick note on the reserves as well. They are a snapshot in time number, and we really look at them during budget time. So like for this year, we'd have a reserve of 1.5 million based on 3 million expenses, but where we're coming in under budget this year, we're coming in better than budget, and it helps us to increase our reserves or alter the reserves. So each year the reserves have to be looked at and edited or finessed as the budget is made. Okay. And then the final thing that I wanted to touch on quickly was on the last page of the whole package. It shows a draft revised Schedule 1. Now, just as far as housekeeping, the bylaws aren't officially updated for the Schedule 1, since we don't have the ability to go back to DOJ and have those adjusted now. So what we do is we post this on the website and say, these are the fees for the next year, and this is what we refer to. And in the bylaw, it does show the CPI increase. So that's how we navigate through that area. And that is the budget in 10 minutes.
Well, that is great, Sean. Thank you so much. And really, again, thank you for the excellent work that you and your team and your audit committee do. It's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's very impressive. So thank you. Thank you so much. That being said, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder for our budget approval motion. That'll get it on the table, and then I'm going to open the floor to directors. So the motion, be it resolved, the board approves the 2026 budget as presented. Could I have a mover, please? Scott, thank you. And Iris as seconder. That's great. So that motion is now on the table, and the floor is open to directors. Feel free to ask any of your questions to Sean. And again, it was so good to have had the couple of in-person meetings to think through our plans, and that gives Sean and his team what they need to start building the budget in order to implement those plans. So thanks in advance, directors, for everything that you've already done to set the stage for today. Again, floor is now open for discussion, comment, questions. Okay, seeing none. Iris and Scott, not to put you on the spotlight or anything, but since you are both on our audit committee and you have really done a lot of heavy lifting on this, just wondering if there's anything you would like to share with your fellow directors around the process, the outcome, and anything at all that you might like to share. Just want to make sure you have an audience.
Yeah, so I'd just like to say that I believe the process itself has been very robust. It has been very mindful of our stakeholders. We are listening. That's very important. We also have a group dynamic now, which is extraordinarily healthy with the internal board members or CPATA board members and the external members of the committee, all, I think very high profile, and we're very indebted to those contributions. And I think that we've been prudent too all along. in the use of resources and responsible in looking forward. This is a future-focused budget and realistic but future-focused. And I think it will only enable CPATA to grow, innovate, and flourish. That's all I have to say.
That's fantastic, Elise. Thank you. Scott, anything you'd like to share with your director friends?
Well, as you all know, I'm new to the committee this year, and I can only say I'm extremely impressed with Sean's work. Do a great job, Sean, with Bob's leadership, and quite frankly, the participation of all of the members of the committee. So I echo what Iris has said, and I'm very happy to be part of the committee.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, floor continues to be open to director questions for Sean or for your colleagues on the committee. All right, I'm going around the table and seeing none. Therefore, I'm going to call for a vote to approve the 2026 budget as presented. Are there any opposed? All right, seeing none, that means all are in favor, and this motion is passed. So thanks very much, and congratulations, Sean. You now have a budget that you can go forward and execute. So yeah, thanks very much for everything that you do. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, that's great. Next on our agenda is other business, and I can share that no directors brought forward any items of other business to me in advance of the meeting, and just wanting to throw it open here if there's anything that anyone would like to add in that area, and seeing none, the motion is, be it resolved that the public part of our meeting be adjourned. So I'll ask someone to make that motion and we'll second it. And then before we vote, we'll just open the floor. Who would like to make that motion? Steve, thank you. A seconder?
I'll second Karima.
Thank you, Karima. That's great. So we're about to adjourn this portion of the meeting and move in camera. And just before we do, I want to thank all of you for your incredible engagement on this board. We have accomplished so much together. We have a powerhouse team and we have a fabulous board. So I really want to thank you all. It's such a tremendous pleasure to work together with you. Want to thank those who joined us from the public in our meeting today. That we're always welcoming to have anyone who would like to listen in. And thanks again to the team for putting together a fabulous board package for us. So with that said, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion to adjourn. Any opposed? You're opposed, Tom? You don't want to adjourn? Okay, gotcha. No, got it. Okay. So that being said, that means everyone actually does approve the motion to adjourn, and I officially adjourn this meeting. We'll move in camera, directors. Let's join again at the top of the hour. Where I'm from, it's 11:48 a.m.